Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Posted. When we left off, I left you at a big cliffhanger. So they were literally heading to the gauntlet. Rose is going to be doing the gauntlet, kind of to save face for the boys, maybe a little bit for Wolf, although we're not sure why. Wolf did try to stop her, but eventually she convinced him that she's got to do it one way or the other, and now we're headed there. Slowly, silently, we trudged up the less steep side of Hirohito Hill. Wolf and Rose leading the way, Dee Dee and me walking behind, and the crowd parting for us the same way they parted for Rose on her first day of school. At the front of the pack, kids clustered at the top. Cameron stood next to his bike, staring at the slope, looking uneasy. Noah Kyle stood on one side. Jason Baker stood on the other side. Jason and Wolf exchanged loaded glances, then Wolf quickly looked away. The crowd was library quiet, nothing but indistinct murmurs, all of them huddled in one large mass to break the wind that had packed up, threatening to topple the bikes where they stood. Rose walked over to Cameron, and for a moment I hoped she would just deck him and get him over with, just knock him to the cement-hard ground. But instead, she extended her hand. "We have a deal. Whoever makes it the farthest," she said. "Yeah, whatever," Cameron said. He waved off her handshake and spit on the ground by her boots, but Rose didn't budge. "Say it," she pressed. "Fine, we have a deal," Cameron said. "I can't wait to see if your fat head even fits in the toilet." Cameron's friends laughed, but you could tell they were nervous, maybe just as nervous as I was, but I doubted it, though. Rose walked back and stood between Wolf and me. "So what do you think, a good day for a ride?" She looked at the rustling leaves. The wind would be at her back, so she'd go even faster. Lucky her. I looked down Hirohito's worst side. It had only been a week since I last stood there, but it looked different this time. The trees had started shedding in earnest, making for a few skeleton limbs that had threatened to reach down and snatch an unwitting rider from his bike, or snatch the back of her ratty old army coat and yank her backwards. It looked steeper, too, almost straight down. I tried to carve out a path with my eyes, but there was no clear line of sight to the bottom of the hill. Everywhere you looked were branches and bark. I noticed a broken bottle had been smashed against one tree, its dark brown glass glinting in an indifferent sun. A red glove stuck out of the leaves a quarter of the way down. I wondered who it had once belonged to. "Yeah, you really don't have to go through with this." Rose threw one leg over my bike. "You're not worried about me, are you, Frosty?" Rose shot me a sneaky kind of smile. "You're too cool to worry, right?" "I'm not worried," I said. "I just agree with Wolf. It's not going to prove anything." "Sure it is," she said. "It's going to prove that a moose can ride a bike. Besides, sometimes you just have to shut up and do something. She turned and looked at Dee Dee. "Wish me luck." Dee Dee nodded. He looked like he was about to lose his Pringles in the grass. Rose turned to Wolf and reached out with one hand. He took it and squeezed. "All right," she said. "Let's show these kids what a ninja sorcerer princess from Chicago can do." Cameron pulled his bike in beside Rose, close enough that he could actually reach out and push her over if he wanted. The crowd closed in behind. I thought I saw some crumpled dollar bills being passed. Not unusual, but it made me wonder what the odds were on Rose. No doubt, Rose was the underdog. It's the first time she had ever even seen the hill. "She's never going to make it," Dee Dee whispered beside me. "She's going to make it," I said. She wasn't going to make it, I thought. It was a matter of physics. Too much speed, too many trees. She was a rookie. It wasn't even her bike. Of course, I didn't think Cameron was going to make it either, so then it would be who crashed first. Noah Kyle stepped up between the two of them and raised both of his arms high in the air, holding them there for several seconds, just to build suspense, and then he brought them down like twin axe blades. Both bikes tilted forward, each taking one push before the gauntlet swallowed them whole. There wasn't a crowd when my father left and made his run, the one that would take him all the way to Florida. Nobody came to wish him good luck, and he'd already said goodbye to the people at the magazine he wrote for, and most of the neighbors were so clearly on my mother's side that there was no point in saying goodbye to them either. In fact, my mother tried to argue that the two of us should not even be around when he left, saying it would be too hard and it would complicate matters. If it were up to her, Dad would have stuck away in the middle of the night, maybe standing in the doorway of my bedroom while I slept, watching the rise and fall of my chest like a tide, maybe whispering a line of a poem or an "I love you," just hoping that he could say it loud enough for me to hear but not wake me. And then he would vanish. But of course my mother didn't get her way, and I got to be there when he left. As he packed up the last of his portion of the loot, my father insisted he didn't need much. It all fit in the back of an SUV. Mostly books and clothes. The laptop computer, the small TV, his baseball mitt he used when he taught me how to catch, the box that I painted him for Father's Day when I was 5, his collection of ball caps, The SUV was stuffed to the tinted window, spilling over into the passenger seat, but it didn't matter because he wasn't taking passengers with him anyway. There were no tears either. There had been enough of those. There had been about a dozen conversations and explanations, none of which I remember because I didn't believe any of them. Probably he said something about two people realizing they weren't right for each other. Undoubtedly, he said something about loving me no matter what. More than 20 times I was told it was absolutely not my fault that he was leaving, which meant it was all their fault, which meant I could just be mad at the two of them. And I was. I was angry enough that I told myself I wasn't going to hug him or say anything or say goodbye. I wasn't going to clench my teeth and jut my chin and narrow my eyes and just stare. And I figured he would know it. That was my plan, the plan of a 10-year-old who isn't getting what he wants. Dad said goodbye to my mother and actually gave her a kiss on the cheek. She told him to drive carefully and text when he got there. Then he sat down next to me on the porch. It's 25 hours by car, but only 3 hours by plane, he said. And it's just a couple months until summer break, and then your mother will let you fly down, and there's a place you can actually swim with stingrays, touch them and everything. My teeth were clenched, my chin was jutted, my eyes were narrowed. Dad ruffled my hair, then he took the tiger's cap off his head, the one that he had since college, and he put it on mine. It was way too big, and it covered the tips of my ears. I didn't move. I didn't take it off. I was a statue. But when he wrapped his arms around me, something inside collapsed and crumbled like a tower made out of wet sand. My hands shot around him, clenched fistfuls of his shirt, hot face buried in his chest, pressing close and tight so I could barely breathe, wanting to burrow as fast as I could, and we sat there like that on the porch for what seemed like an hour. Long enough for my mom to go back inside. Long enough for me to remember what it felt like to listen to him breathe. He waited for me to let go. I had to be the one to let go. But as soon as I loosened my grip a little, he pulled away. Then he stood up and looked one last time at the house that we had lived in for most of my life. He told me goodbye, and I love you, and we'll talk soon. All the things you're supposed to say to somebody. And I went back to clenching my teeth as the truck drove off, absolutely positive that at that moment I was the most miserable kid in the universe. I sat and watched him go, even long after there was nothing more to look at. Then I went inside, slamming the door behind me, loud enough I hoped for everyone in the world to be able to hear. Back to the gauntlet, I could barely watch her, pulling down the brim of my cap to half cover my eyes. The crowd erupted the moment they took off, both bikes instantly diverging and choosing totally different paths. You could see Rose was struggling to maintain her balance, the front wheel wobbling over the uneven terrain, my old bike listing one way and the other. She hadn't even gotten to the middle of the hill yet, where the trees were clumped together close. Most of the kids were hooting and hollering, incomprehensive grunts and shouts, but a few were calling out Cameron's name. Dee had his hands in front of his eyes, splayed like he was watching a horror movie. Wolf had his fists clenched, but he was still watching. A third of the way down, Rose brushed against the trunk of one of the trees, catching the right handlebar and wrenching her wheel around, sending her off course, or at least onto a new course. I felt sure she was going to wipe out there, but somehow she recovered, adjusting to the new trajectory, instantly rebuilding her speed. Cameron was ahead of her. He seemed to have found a fairly well-worn path. Maybe he planned that route ahead of time. It made all the difference. If Rose bit it now, she would lose for sure. I tried not to think about what that toilet smelled like in the boys' room, the ring of brown and yellow crust around the rims. Tried not to imagine the cold water on my lips, up my nose, and in my hair. The crowd around me started calling Cameron's name louder. I don't know if they were friends of his particularly, friends of friends. Maybe it was just that he was in the lead. In middle school, all other things being equal, you side with the kid who has the best chance of winning. In front of me, Dee had given up his finger slats and buried his face completely in his hands. I can't watch, he said. I couldn't not watch. Beside me, Wolf was unshakable, pumping his fists, his cheeks pink from the wind. Come on, Rose, you can do it, he shouted at the top of his lungs. Some of the kids standing next to us gave him looks, and I didn't say anything. She probably couldn't hear anything above the other kids. Maybe she couldn't hear anything above the wind. I put my hands on top of my father's cap, holding it in place. Every muscle in my body tightened. She's going to make it, Wolf said to nobody in particular. They were 2/3 of the way down the hill, both of them weaving, ducking branches that had threatened to clothesline. Rose hit a bump and actually went airborne for an instant, and I held my breath, hanging on to it, even after she landed. It was difficult to make out either bike through the trees. Holy crap, Dee whispered beside me, and I knew he was watching. I don't believe this. I nodded. I actually had never seen anybody make it this far before. I had heard stories, but I'd never seen it. They were almost to the bottom, both of them. This wasn't just a bet, it was an actual race. For the first time in Breton history, two people could conquer the gauntlet at the same time. And then I saw the back of Cameron's black and red jacket suddenly rise into the air just for a second before it disappeared, being swallowed by the green. The gauntlet struck quickly, biting once and dragging him into the dirt. He was down. Less than a second later, Wolf pointed. There she is. My huffy blue bike shot through the wall of trees at the bottom of the hill at breakneck speed, its rider a mostly green splotch from this far away, her jacket flapping behind her like a cape. The bike skidded sideways, sliding to a stop. The rider hopped off and put both fists in the air. The crowd instantly shut up, every mouth dripping open in disbelief, because Rose Holland, the moose, the dozer, the girl with the empty seat at the table, who made phoenixes shaped like fish and had once told me my mom was cool and that she liked my room, Rose Holland had conquered the gauntlet. I couldn't hear anything over the sound of my own cheers. We'll stop there. Till next time.